What is the one phone number you trust? Like, more than any other number in the
Oh,
world?
definitely your own.
Right. I mean, your own. You might ignore an unknown caller, sure.
Yeah, block a spam risk immediately.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if your own name and your own number pop up on your screen, your defenses just completely drop.
They vanish because, it's you.
But what happens when the device holding your entire life, your bank accounts, your private messages, your location data, what if it decides to use your own identity against you?
That is a terrifying thought.
It really is. Today, we're doing a deep dive into a scenario where the call truly is coming from inside the house, or, well, inside your pocket, I guess.
Right.
We are jumping into this completely chilling narrative. It's a transcript from a YouTube channel called The Midnight Curator, and it's titled, "My Phone Started Texting Me from My Own Number."
Such a good hook.
It is. And I have to say right up front to everyone listening, this isn't just some, standard campfire ghost story.
No, not at all.
This piece of source material, it forces us to look at some incredibly uncomfortable truths about human psychology.
It absolutely does. And the mission for this deep dive, really, is to deconstruct the actual mechanics of modern paranoia.
Yeah.
We are going to look at the biological and technological reasons why we are so vulnerable to feeling hunted.
Even in safe places.
Exactly. Even when you are sitting in a crowded, perfectly safe public space. We're going to examine the cognitive mechanisms that allow us to be manipulated by, glowing rectangles.
They got phones.
Yeah. And ultimately, we are going to break down the sinister paradox at the center of this narrative.
Which is just, wow.
It really is. It's
Yeah.
the point where a person's own reflection, which is the absolute foundation of their visual identity, detaches.
And becomes a malevolent, separate being.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We need to explore the fragility of the self.
So let's start with the opening scene.
Yeah.
Because the contrast here is what makes the hook so effective.
Set the stage for us.
Okay, so picture this. You are sitting in a local cafe. It's late evening. It's raining outside.
Classic moody setting.
Right. Soft ambient music is playing. People just typing away on laptops. It is that perfect, comfortable bubble of public isolation.
Oh, I love that phrase. Public isolation.
You know the feeling, right? You're surrounded by people, which makes you feel safe.
Yes, safety in numbers.
But you are completely ignored by them, which gives you privacy.
It's the best of both worlds.
Exactly. So the narrator's phone is just resting on the table, and it buzzes.
Okay.
They look down, expecting a text from a friend or whatever. But the sender ID is their own name.
Just their own name.
The text is coming from their exact phone number. And the message simply says, "Don't go home tonight."
Wow.
Now, I'm going to stop right here and put on my skeptic hat for a second.
Oh, here we go.
Because, look, if I get a text from my own number, my brain doesn't immediately jump to, oh no, a supernatural threat.
Right, of course not.
I'm assuming, my cellular carrier is having a weird routing error. Or someone is spoofing my number. I'm annoyed, I'm not terrified.
Which is the entirely rational, logical response.
Thank you.
And honestly, that is exactly how the narrator reacts initially. They laugh it off as a bug.
Right.
But let's actually look at the technological reality of what you just mentioned. Spoofing.
Yeah, how does that actually work?
Well, we assume our phone numbers are these secure, locked identifiers. But in reality, the global telecommunications network relies on these archaic signaling protocols.
Archaic meaning how old?
Decades old. Specifically something called SS7, or Signaling System Number 7.
Okay.
It was built back when only massive telecom companies had access to the network, right?
We didn't need security.
Exactly. It was built on absolute trust. It doesn't authenticate who is sending a message, it just routes it.
So it just assumes you are who you say you are.
Precisely. Today, anyone with a little bit of technical knowledge and access to certain web portals can manipulate caller ID data.
That's unsettling.
They can make a text look like it's coming from your bank, from your spouse, or in this case, from your own number.
So it's essentially just digital forgery. And the network just blindly accepts the fake signature.
Well, I shouldn't say precisely forgery because it's messier than simple forgery. It's an exploitation of a systemic blind spot.
The network assumes the metadata is honest.
Yes. Scammers use this constantly, but when you receive cryptic text messages from your own number, it triggers a very specific kind of cognitive dissonance.
How so?
Well, your brain categorizes your smartphone not just as a tool, but as literally an extension of your physical self.
Really? like a body part.
Yes. Studies in neuroplasticity suggest that when we use smartphones constantly, our brains actually map the device into our parietal lobe as if it were an extra limb.
Oh my God, that's wild.
It is. So when your phone receives a threat from itself, your brain is experiencing a localized autoimmune response.
Your digital limb is attacking you.
Exactly. The narrator wants to believe it's a software glitch because the alternative is that someone has bypassed their most intimate perimeter.
See, but I'm stuck on the fact that they text back, though.
Oh, right. They do reply.
The narrator replies, "Nice try. Who is this?"
Yeah.
If my phone starts texting me ominous warnings, I am force restarting the device. I might even pull the SIM card if I'm feeling particularly paranoid about a hack.
Just shut it down entirely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not trying to interview the glitch. Why do we treat an anomaly like a person? Why do we engage?
Well, it really comes down to a psychological concept related to the Zeigarnik effect.
The Zeigarnik effect.
Yeah, combined with our evolutionary hardwiring for pattern recognition. The Zeigarnik effect dictates that humans remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks much better than completed ones.
So we fixate on mysteries.
A mystery, an unanswered question, it creates a state of intense cognitive tension. Your brain hates open loops.
It wants closure.
Desperately. If the narrator throws the phone away or ignores the text, they have to sit with an undefined, omnipresent threat.
Oh, I see.
By asking, who is this, they are trying to force the unknown variable into a known category.
Even if the answer is bad.
Right. Even if the answer is, I am a hacker, that is still a defined parameter. A known threat is always biologically preferable to an unknown threat.
Okay, I have an analogy for this. It's like the muddy footprint analogy.
Oh, let's hear it.
Imagine you're walking into your house, you deadbolt the door, you turn on the alarm, you are perfectly secure.
Safe and sound.
Then you look down at the living room rug, and there is a fresh, wet, muddy footprint.
Creepy.
That's terrifying on its own. But then you look closer at the tread, and you realize it matches the exact soles of the shoes you are currently wearing.
Oh, wow.
It is your footprint, but you know for an absolute fact you didn't step there.
Because you just walked in.
Right. The violation is total because the intruder didn't just break into your house. They are wearing your skin.
That analogy perfectly isolates the conceptual violation here.
Right. By asking, who is this? The narrator is basically shouting into the empty house, hoping someone answers so they can stop wondering if they are losing their mind.
And the entity actually answers. As soon as the narrator hits send, the 3 typing dots appear.
Which is physically impossible.
Think about that for a second. You are holding the device, but the screen is showing you that the device is currently typing a response to you.
It's so freaky, and the reply comes. It says, "You won't believe me."
This is where the narrator tests the boundaries of reality.
Yeah, they call the number, they tap their own contact, and hit the call button.
A very bold move.
And this is the moment that makes my stomach completely drop, because the phone in their hand immediately starts ringing.
The incoming call screen takes over.
Yes. They are holding a device that is calling the device they're holding. They hang up in a massive panic. And 3 seconds later, a text arrives. "You just called me."
See, we have to look at the mechanics of this feedback loop.
Because it breaks the spoofing theory, right?
Completely.
Yeah.
If this were a simple SS7 spoofing attack, calling the number wouldn't route back to the hacker.
Where would it go?
It would just route to your own voicemail or give you a busy signal. The fact that the phone rings in their hand and the entity immediately acknowledges the physical action in the real world.
That destroys the hacker theory.
It destroys the software glitch theory, too.
Yeah.
A software glitch does not observe your panic and comment on it in real time.
Right.
This is the exact moment the source material transitions from a tale of digital vulnerability into an impossible, localized reality distortion.
So the narrator types, "Who are you?" And the instant reply is just one word, "You."
The muddy footprint is claiming to be the shoe.
That is exactly it.
And this leads us directly into the architectural breakdown of the public space.
Okay, what happens next?
The narrator is reeling from this impossible text, trying to rationalize it, when the digital anomaly suddenly reaches out and grabs the physical world.
It leaves the screen,
Next text arrives, and it says, "You're still at the cafe."
which instantly shatters that comfortable bubble of public isolation we talked about earlier.
Let's examine how public trust functions. When you sit in a cafe, you are relying on the social contract.
Like everyone is just doing their own thing.
You assume everyone around you is the protagonist of their own mundane story, just minding their own business.
Right.
You feel safe because of the bystander effect in reverse. There are witnesses, so no one will try anything malicious.
Sure, nobody's going to attack you in a crowded Starbucks.
But that single text message, you're still at the cafe, it weaponizes the entire environment.
Because now they're watching you.
Suddenly, every single person in that room is a potential node of the threat.
The text basically becomes a director. The phone buzzes again, window behind you.
Drawing their attention.
The narrator turns their head, looking into the reflection of the wet glass against the dark street. The next text says, "You're about to see him."
Setting the expectation.
And right on cue, the cafe door chimes, and a suspicious stranger walks in.
A tall man.
Yeah, a tall man wearing a dark rain jacket, water dripping off him. He's holding a phone.
Okay, a phone, just like the narrator.
He looks up. His eyes sweep the room. They lock onto the narrator for a split second, and then he looks down at his screen. And the narrator's phone buzzes. That's him.
We need to dissect the cognitive manipulation happening right here, because it's brilliant.
What do you mean?
Think about what that tall man actually did, objectively.
He walked into a coffee shop out of the rain, holding a smartphone, and glanced around to find a seat.
Literally the most normal behavior possible.
Yeah, nothing illegal about getting a latte.
Exactly. He committed no aggressive act. But I want to introduce a mechanism here. It's highly akin to the psychology of a psychic cold reading.
Oh, like when mediums talk to an audience.
Yes, combined with severe confirmation bias. When a quote-unquote psychic tells a client, "I sense an older male figure with an M name who passed away."
Oh, I see. The client fills in the blank.
Right. The client's brain desperately scans its memory banks to find a match. "Oh, Uncle Mike." And they ignore all the misses and amplify the hits.
The brain does the heavy lifting to make the prophecy true.
Exactly. In this narrative, the text message acts as the psychic. It primed the narrator's brain with a specific threatening expectation. You're about to see him.
So when a man happened to walk in at that exact second,
Which, in a busy cafe on a rainy night, is statistically highly probable.
the narrator's brain instantly and violently fused the man to the prophecy.
Yes.
Wait, let me push back on that though. Are you saying the suspicious stranger might have absolutely nothing to do with this?
It is entirely possible.
That he's just a random guy getting a coffee, and the entity inside the phone is just using him as a prop to terrify the narrator.
Frankly, it is the more insidious interpretation. The human brain suffers from apophenia.
Apophenia, what's that?
It's the tendency to perceive meaningful connections between completely unrelated things.
Oh, right.
If I tell you the next person who coughs in this room is a hired assassin, the moment someone clears their throat, your sympathetic nervous system is going to flood your body with adrenaline.
I would panic.
You'll perceive their cough as a hostile act. The entity texting to the narrator is choreographing reality by simply narrating mundane events and layering them with absolute dread.
So the narrator asks the text, "Who is he?" The reply is, "Someone who shouldn't see you tonight."
It's so vague.
It is so vague, but it works perfectly. Because the man goes to the counter, orders a coffee, and then walks back into the seating area.
The tension is building.
The text buzzes. He's going to sit 2 tables behind you. The narrator freezes. They listen. The scrape of a chair against the floorboards, exactly 2 tables back.
Validating the phone's authority again.
And then comes the instruction that I think is the most agonizing part of the entire source material. The text says, "Don't look at him too long."
That is the crux of the psychological torture in this scene.
It really is.
Why is that specific instruction so agonizing?
Well, because it demands that you suppress millions of years of evolutionary survival instincts.
Exactly.
If there's a predator in the room, your biology demands that you track it. You need to keep eyes on the tiger. Yeah.
You have to know where the threat is.
You need to look at its hands, its posture, to calculate if it's going to lunge at you. But this glowing screen is demanding that you act completely normal.
Total contradiction.
You have to pretend to read your laptop while you firmly believe a killer is sitting 6 feet behind your spine.
And look at what this accomplishes. By forcing the narrator to suppress their physical instincts, the entity transfers the narrator's absolute trust onto the phone.
Oh, that makes sense.
Let's map the power dynamic here. Logically, the texter who hacked the phone and claims to be the narrator is the primary anomaly, right?
Yeah, they are the clear and present danger. They hacked the phone.
But because the texter correctly predicted the tall man's entrance, the narrator's brain instantly categorizes the tall man as the active threat.
And the texter as the omniscient protector.
Yes.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend, even if my friend is some sort of malevolent ghost living in my SIM card.
It is the exact architecture of a cult dynamic or a coercive control relationship.
Wait, really? Like a cult?
Yes. The fastest way to gain absolute compliance from a human being is to invent a terrifying external threat. Convince them that the world is inherently lethal, and position yourself as the sole source of salvation.
Oh, wow.
Only I can see the danger. Only I can guide you through it. Once the narrator accepts that premise, their agency is completely gone. They are remote controlled.
And the remote control activates right then. The text reads, "You should leave the cafe."
Dictating the next move.
The narrator hesitates. They type back, "Why?" And the response introduces the ultimate catalyst for panic, a time limit.
Oh, time limits.
The text says, because in 6 minutes, he's going to follow you home.
Manufactured urgency. Artificial scarcity of time.
It's so manipulative.
It's the same psychological lever used by high-pressure sales tactics and phishing emails, you know?
Like, click this link or your account is deleted in 10 minutes.
Exactly. When you compress the timeline, you bypass the prefrontal cortex, which is the logical, deliberative part of the brain.
And force the amygdala to take the wheel.
Yes, the fear center. The narrator doesn't have time to secretly observe the man to see if he's actually dangerous.
Or to, like, ask a barista for help.
The ticking clock forces blind action.
So the narrator shoves their laptop into their bag. They stand up. They have to walk right past the tall man's table to get to the door.
That walk must feel like a mile.
As they pass, their eyes meet for just a fraction of a second. The source text notes that the man's expression doesn't change, but his hands slowly tighten around his phone.
Oh, that little detail.
Right. Is he getting a text? Is he preparing to grab them? The narrator doesn't wait to find out. They push through the door and step out into the freezing rain.
They are leaving a populated, safe, well-lit environment entirely because a text message told them to.
Which brings us to the next phase of the ordeal. Sensory restriction.
This is where things get really grim.
They are power walking down the wet pavement. The phone buzzes. Good. Now listen carefully. The narrator stops under a flickering streetlight, and the text delivers one of the most primal, terrifying commands in human history. Do not turn around.
Let's delve into the neurobiology of fear here, specifically regarding unseen threats.
Yeah, why is that so scary?
Why is the concept of something standing behind you inherently more terrifying than something standing right in front of you?
Well, I mean, if a guy with a knife is standing in front of me, I'm terrified, obviously. But I have data.
Exactly, data.
I can see how tall he is. I can see which hand holds the knife. I can judge the distance between us. I can look for a heavy object to throw at him. I can calculate my odds.
Your visual cortex is feeding data to your brain, allowing it to strategize.
Right.
But when the threat is behind you, your visual cortex provides zero input. However, your amygdala, the fear center we just talked about, is still fully activated.
It knows something is wrong.
Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does the human brain. When it lacks visual data about a confirmed threat, it synthesizes the data using imagination.
Imagination is always worse.
The human imagination, driven by survival instincts, will always conjure the absolute worst-case scenario. It will imagine the predator is twice as fast, twice as large, and literally inches away.
And the environment is actively working against them right now. It's raining heavily, tires are hissing on the wet asphalt, water is drumming against awnings. The source material highlights this specifically.
The acoustic environment is so critical here. Rain creates a dense layer of broad-spectrum white noise.
Meaning it blocks out other sounds.
Yes. Human hearing evolved to detect distinct acoustic anomalies. The snap of a twig, the crunch of a leaf against a relatively quiet background.
Right, hunter-gatherer stuff.
White noise effectively scrambles that auditory tracking system. The frequencies of the rain mask the frequencies of footsteps.
So they can't hear him coming.
The narrator is functionally deaf to the threat behind them.
They're forbidden to use their eyes, and the rain has blinded their ears.
Which means the glowing screen of the smartphone is now their only functioning sensory organ.
That's horrifying.
The digital interface has entirely superseded biological reality. The phone is now a proxy for their eyes and ears.
The text updates. He just walked out of the cafe. The narrator feels that heavy electric pressure at the base of their skull, that phantom sensation of being watched.
I all know that feeling.
They start to move. The phone buzzes. Start walking. They speed up. Don't run. They force themselves to slow down. I find this dynamic fascinating and deeply upsetting.
It is upsetting.
The phone is literally a leash.
Yeah.
It is micromanaging their stride, their speed, their posture.
It is the absolute surrender of bodily autonomy to an algorithm, or, in this case, to the entity.
But the narrative shifts here. The narrator, trying to process this nightmare, texts back, "Who is he? Why is he following me?"
Seeking answers again.
And the reply takes a moment. When it comes, it says, "Someone who thinks you have something he wants."
Notice how the paradigm of the horror story just fractured?
What do you mean?
Up until now, the setup was simple. A predator is hunting prey. But the introduction of a motive changes the narrator's role in their own life.
A narrator texts, "What do I have?" The typing bubbles appear, vanish, and appear again. Finally, the text comes through. Me.
And there it is. The profound demotion of the self.
Demotion.
If we look at the structural mechanics of this narrative, the narrator has just realized they are not the protagonist.
Wait, what do you mean they aren't the protagonist? They are the one being hunted in the rain.
They are being hunted, yes, but they are not the central focus of the conflict.
I don't follow.
The conflict is between the tall man and the entity inside the phone.
Oh.
The physical human being, the narrator, is merely the vessel. They are the courier, the prize.
Like an object.
In cinematic terms, they have been reduced to a MacGuffin, a briefcase of money that two powerful forces are fighting over. Their humanity, their desires, their fears, none of it matters.
Wow.
They are just meat carrying a contested digital soul.
That is deeply bleak. It strips away all your agency. You aren't a person surviving. You are an object being transported. The phone buzzes. Turn left at the next corner. They obey blindly, turning down a darker residential street.
Into isolation.
And the texts become a horrific proximity radar. He's getting closer. 10 steps behind you.
A countdown.
The narrator's chest is tight. 10 steps is nothing. In a quiet room, you can hear someone breathing at 10 steps.
But the rain drowns it out.
They keep walking, staring only at the screen. 7 steps.
The psychological vice is tightening here. By providing a countdown, the entity is compressing the space between safety and violence.
Agonizing.
It gives the brain just enough time to anticipate the agony of a knife in the back, but not enough time to formulate an escape plan.
The phone buzzes. 5 steps. The narrator's hands are shaking violently. They describe the distorted orange glow of the streetlights reflecting off the wet pavement.
Setting up the climax.
And then the text appears incredibly slowly, 1 dot at a time. 3 steps.
Just 3 steps away.
The narrator physically feels a displacement of air, a cold draft brushing against the wet hair on the back of their neck. The tension is absolute. Every muscle is locked, bracing for the hand to grab their shoulder, bracing for the impact of the attack.
I want to pause on that cold draft on the neck.
Yeah, is that real?
That is a somatic response generated entirely by the brain.
So there isn't actually cold air.
The brain has been convinced by the digital authority that a physical body is 3 steps away.
Wait.
So the brain prepares for the physical collision by heightening the tactile sensitivity of the skin on the back of the neck. It's a psychosomatic manifestation of pure dread.
It's the brain bracing for impact.
Exactly.
And then, the ultimate subversion. The phone buzzes one last time with an instruction. Now you can turn around.
The release of the sensory restriction, the moment the blindfold comes off.
The narrator stops walking. Their heart is hammering against their ribs. Slowly, terrified, they pivot on their heels to face the tall man, to face the killer.
And what do they see?
Nothing.
Exactly nothing.
The street behind them is completely empty. There is no tall man in a dark jacket. There are no footsteps receding into the alley. There is no one hiding behind a parked car.
Total emptiness.
It is just a long, empty stretch of wet asphalt, rain falling under the amber streetlights. The narrator is standing entirely alone.
And this is where the narrative executes a masterful paradigm shift.
Capital sound.
It is the transition from physical horror to metaphysical horror.
I have to admit, when I first read this part of the source material, I was so confused.
Oh, why is that?
Why didn't I feel relieved? If I think a killer is behind me and I turn around and no one is there, my first emotion should be massive relief.
Logically, yes.
But reading it, the emptiness of the street feels infinitely worse than a man with a knife would have felt. Why is the empty street so terrifying?
Because an empty street means the laws of physics have broken down.
Oh.
We talked about how the narrator transferred all their trust to the text messages. The texts predicted the man in the cafe perfectly. The texts tracked his movements. If the narrator turns around and sees a man with a knife, it is a terrible, violent, tragic event. But it is an event that obeys the laws of biological reality.
You can fight a man.
You can fight a man, you can bleed, you can run, it is a known terror. But if the text has been 100% accurate and you turn around to an empty street...
It means reality itself is compromised.
Yes, the rules of the universe are broken.
The threat is no longer bound by flesh and blood. The narrator stares at the empty street, totally bewildered. Their phone buzzes. Good.
Haunting.
They stare at the screen. A second message arrives. Because the man behind you wasn't the one following you.
The decoy horror story is revealed.
Decoy.
The entity spent 30 minutes constructing an intricate, deeply believable narrative about a physical stalker, specifically to mask the true supernatural threat.
Oh my God.
It used the very real, very human fear of being followed in the dark as a smokescreen.
The narrator's hands go totally numb. They type back, "Then who was?" The reply's instant. Look at the reflection.
And now, we arrive at the sinister paradox, the core of our deep dive.
The narrator looks around the empty street. The gutters are slightly backed up with the heavy rain, creating large, still puddles of water along the curb,
Mirrors on the ground.
catching the orange glow of the street lamp above. I want you, the listener, to visualize this step by step. You walk slowly toward the edge of the curb. You look down into the dark water.
And what do you see?
At first, it looks perfectly normal. You see the reflection of the street light, you see the reflection of your dark coat, your shoes, your legs. But as you stare at the water, a deep, primal sickness blooms in your stomach.
We are entering the uncanny valley, but applied directly to the ego.
Because the reflection in the puddle isn't moving right, the narrator slowly, experimentally, raises their left hand. And down in the dark water, the reflection raises its left hand too.
But
there's a delay, a fraction of a second, like bad video lag on a satellite feed.
oh, that makes my skin crawl.
It is almost imperceptible, but it is undeniably there. When the narrator lowers their hand, the reflection lowers its hand a half second later.
To understand why this induces such profound existential panic, we need to look at evolutionary psychology,
Tell me more.
and specifically the concept of mirror self-recognition. In developmental psychology, there is a milestone called the mirror stage.
When babies recognize themselves.
Yes. When a human infant or certain highly intelligent animals like chimpanzees or dolphins look into a mirror and realize, that image is me.
Right.
It is the foundational building block of self-awareness. It grounds the ego. The absolute one-to-one synchronicity of movement is the physical proof that you exist and that you have agency over your physical form.
It's the ultimate confirmation of control.
Yes. So when that synchronicity breaks, even by a millisecond, it is not just spooky. It is an assault on your fundamental understanding of what you are.
It breaks your reality.
The uncanny valley effect usually applies to robots or animations that look almost human but not quite, triggering an evolutionary alarm bell that scientists theorize is linked to pathogen avoidance.
Like the brain recognizing a corpse and telling you to run.
Exactly. But here, the uncanny valley is your own face. The delay suggests that the image is not a reflection of light. It is an imitation being performed by an independent consciousness.
It's sickening. The narrator stumbles backward away from the pedal. The phone buzzes. You see it now.
The entity gloating.
The narrator is hyperventilating. They type, "What is that?" The response takes longer this time. The three dots appear, vanish, appear again.
Drawing it out.
And when the text finally arrives, it delivers a line that entirely recontextualizes the entire night. It reads, "It's the version of you that stayed home tonight."
The doppelganger.
It's just, wow.
But a uniquely modern psychological manifestation of it. This isn't a demon taking your shape, and it isn't an evil twin separated at birth. It is framed as an anomaly of choice.
I want to dig really deeply into this concept because this is where the source material gets intensely philosophical.
Mm-hmm.
An anomaly of choice. What are we actually talking about here?
Whoa.
Is it like the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics applied to a Tuesday night coffee run?
Effectively, yes.
Yeah.
Every single day, a human being makes thousands of binary decisions.
For sure.
Do I hit snooze or do I get up? Do I take the highway or the back roads? Do I speak my mind in this meeting or do I stay quiet?
Small stuff.
And crucially for our narrator, do I go out to the cafe in the rain or do I stay home?
Oh.
The text suggests a horrifying metaphysical reality. That the mundane decision to leave the house didn't just determine the narrator's path. It actively birthed an autonomous physical reality where the opposite choice was made.
It implies that unmade choices don't just vanish into the ether of what-ifs, they solidify.
Exactly. The version that stayed home gained consciousness, and clearly it gained deep, profound malevolence. It resents the prime version for leaving.
Wait, this makes the very first text of the night incredibly dark in retrospect.
Oh, it's the first text.
I need to go back to the cafe. The very first message the narrator received was, "Don't go home tonight." We all assumed, and the narrator assumed, That it was a warning.
Don't go home because a stalker is waiting for you.
But that's not what it meant at all.
No, it wasn't a warning. It was a territorial claim.
A claim.
It was the doppelganger declaring ownership of the domestic space. It was saying, your home is already occupied by the version of you that chose to stay here.
Oh my God.
You have been replaced. You cannot return.
That is utterly chilling. Your sanctuary has been stolen by the ghost of a choice you didn't make.
It's an invasion of the ultimate safe space.
The narrator is standing in the rain, shivering, staring at the puddle. The phone buzzes again. I told you not to go home.
Taunting them.
The streetlights above begin to flicker, buzzing with electrical strain. The surface of the puddle ripples, even though the rain seems to have paused.
The physics breaking down further.
And then, the reflection stops copying the narrator entirely.
The lag is gone.
The narrator is standing, breathing hard, holding the phone. But the reflection in the water is standing completely still, its arms at its sides, simply staring up at the narrator.
The lag was just the transitional phase. The boundary between the two realities, the prime reality and the unlived choice, was thinning.
And now?
Now the boundary is shattered. The reflection has achieved total independence. It refuses to even attempt the pantomime of being a reflection anymore.
The final text arrives on the phone. It found you first.
Which forces us to confront the logistics of this entire operation.
What do you mean?
It found you first. Who is it? And more importantly, who is texting?
Right. If the reflection is the thing that found the narrator,
Yes.
then who the hell has been sending the cryptic text messages all night? Logistically, the reflection in a puddle cannot be typing on a smartphone.
This is the most crucial debate of the deep dive. There are two primary interpretations of this logistical nightmare.
Okay, let's hear them.
Let's look at interpretation A first. Interpretation A suggests a fracturing of the timeline into at least three parts. You have the narrator in the street, you have the malevolent doppelganger in the puddle that stayed home, and you have a third version.
Where did the third version come from?
Perhaps a version that decided to go to a different cafe, or a version that stayed late at work. This third version has somehow gained omniscience across the multiversal timelines.
So it can see everything.
It sees the doppelganger hunting the prime narrator, and it hacked the phone to send warnings.
Okay, let's explore that. If a helpful, omniscient third version is texting, then the tall man in the cafe might actually have been a total coincidence.
Just a random guy.
He's just a random guy. But the helpful third version used him as an excuse, a scare tactic, to get the narrator moving out of the cafe and to keep them ahead of the reflection.
In that scenario, yes. The texts were a desperate, ultimately failed attempt to navigate the prime narrator through a collapsing hostile reality. The helpful version was trying to herd the narrator to safety, but it found you first. The doppelganger intercepted them.
I don't buy interpretation A.
No.
It's too neat. It relies on a guardian angel that failed. You mentioned in interpretation B.
I did, and interpretation B is far more structurally sound and infinitely more terrifying.
Lay it on me.
Interpretation B posits that there was no helpful third version. The doppelganger, the reflection, was the one texting the entire time.
But how does that work mechanically?
If the doppelganger is a metaphysical manifestation of an unlived choice, it isn't bound by the physical requirement of tapping on a keyboard.
It's purely anomalous.
It is a digital and physical anomaly. Think about the entire night as a masterclass in psychological manipulation by an apex predator playing with its food.
Oh my God, the herding.
Exactly. The doppelganger wants to consume, replace, or destroy the narrator. But it cannot easily execute that takeover in a brightly lit cafe surrounded by 20 witnesses.
It needs them alone.
It requires isolation. It needs the narrator completely alone, physically vulnerable, and most importantly, psychologically broken.
Why break it?
Because extreme fear shatters the psychological defenses of the self, making the ego malleable.
So the tragic irony is absolute. The text messages warning the narrator about the tall man, giving them the countdown, telling them where to turn.
Yes.
They weren't protecting the narrator at all. They were funneling them.
Driving the prey.
They were driving the narrator out of the safety of the public space, down an empty, dark, rainy street, directly to the specific puddle where the doppelganger had positioned itself to spring the trap.
The doppelganger manufactured the terror of a fake stalker to drive the prey right into the jaws of the real monster.
That is brilliant and awful.
The text, "It found you first," isn't a tragic warning from a friend. It is the predator mocking the prey in its final moments.
Like game over.
It is the doppelganger revealing the absolute hopelessness of the trap. You ran from a phantom and it led you straight to me.
The claustrophobia of that realization is suffocating. The narrator is trapped, and the final moment of the source material plays out.
Take us through it.
The reflection in the puddle moves, but it doesn't move like a reflection, and it doesn't move like water. The narrator describes it stepping forward toward the surface of the puddle.
Oh, that's deeply wrong.
It is climbing out of the two-dimensional plane, pushing against the surface tension of the water, trying to breach into the three-dimensional world.
The total collapse of the boundary between the self and the other. The image is invading the host reality.
And just before the streetlight above them surges and goes entirely dark, the narrator sees the reflection's face clearly through the water. It is their own face,
Yes.
but it's smiling.
We need to analyze that smile because it is the ultimate corruption of biological signaling.
Why is a smile scary here?
In human evolutionary biology, a smile is a sign of submission, of non-threat, of connection. It is meant to soothe, to take the most familiar, comforting image a human being possesses, their own resting face, and twist it with a smile that you are not actively creating.
It's violating.
It is a declaration of sovereign, hostile intent. It subverts a cue of safety into a promise of extreme violence. It is the ultimate betrayal by the one person you can never, ever outrun.
Yourself. The streetlight dies. The story ends abruptly right there. The screen goes black.
A cliffhanger.
We are left completely in the dark, just like the narrator.
Yeah.
We don't know the physical mechanism of the attack, but the victory of the doppelganger feels absolute.
It is a phenomenal piece of modern psychological horror because it doesn't just rely on jump scares. It targets our foundational assumptions about how the world works.
It really does.
It attacks our blind trust in digital infrastructure, our reliance on the social contracts of public spaces, and ultimately the integrity of our own identity.
The rapid descent, let's look back at how quickly it escalated.
From coffee to nightmare?
It started with a relatable, almost mundane annoyance. A phone glitching, a text from your own number. We've all had technology behave strangely.
Yeah, you just assume it's a bug.
But the narrative expertly uses that tiny hairline fracture in our digital trust to pry open a massive cavern of paranoia.
It used sensory deprivation, the heavy rain masking sound, the darkness limiting vision.
To force the phone to become the only source of truth. And then it took the ultimate symbol of the self, the reflection, and turned it into the executioner.
And while the supernatural elements of the doppelganger are confined to the fiction of the source material, the psychological mechanisms are very real.
Absolutely.
The next time you are out on a rainy night walking past a large, dark, reflective glass building, or when you pause near a deep puddle reflecting a street lamp,
Oh, don't do this to me.
I encourage you to pay close attention to the image looking back at you.
Just look at it.
Look at the swing of your arm. Look at the blink of your eyes. Is the reflection moving perfectly, seamlessly in sync with your biology?
I'm never looking at a puddle again.
Or is there a microsecond delay? Just a tiny, almost imperceptible drag in the video feed of your reality.
If there is a lag, maybe don't look too closely. We make thousands of tiny choices every single day. You decide to turn left instead of right. You decide to stay home instead of going out.
Every choice matters.
You decide to listen to this deep dive instead of playing music. Every single time you make a choice, you abandon another potential version of your life.
The unlived lives, the branches pruned from the tree of your reality.
But I want to pivot this from the supernatural horror of ghosts and puddles to the very real dread of our modern technological landscape.
Let's do it.
Because we actually do leave shadows of ourselves everywhere we go. We leave digital footprints, data profiles, algorithmic ghosts that track our habits, our locations, our desires, and our fears.
That is an incredibly potent parallel. The algorithm as the modern doppelganger.
Exactly. The provocative thought I want to leave you with isn't just whether a metaphysical ghost in a puddle is watching you.
No, it's much closer to home.
It's whether the digital algorithm that has learned your every habit, the shadow profile compiled by your devices, have already become a separate, autonomous version of you.
A version that predicts what you will do before you do it.
Yes, a version that subtly influences what you buy, what media you consume, and where you go, completely without your conscious permission.
If the phone in your pocket knows you better than you know yourself, who is actually making the choices?
Are you steering the device? Or is the digital doppelganger quietly herding you down an empty street right to where it wants you?
It really makes you wonder. The next time you find a fresh, muddy footprint in your locked house that perfectly matches the shoes on your feet,
Who exactly is the intruder?
Are you the one who belongs in the house?
Or are you just the version that hasn't been replaced yet? Until next time, keep an eye on your screens and an even closer eye on your mirrors.